With the 6th pick in the 2014 NBA Draft, the Boston Celtics select Marcus Smart from Oklahoma State University.
This is Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics, and you're listening to Drive Time Sports with Jordan Buscarini.
Marcus Smart, what a spin move and a finish. Hard to handle Marcus Smart, whether he's outside or inside the paint.
Let's talk NBA basketball here on Drive Time Sports. Still a couple of nights away from the Jazz returning. In fact, tomorrow we'll get Utah Jazz basketball as they return to take on the Houston Rockets. Sets up for a very busy weekend coming up of basketball. We'll be back in the college ranks on Saturday. We have Jazz basketball on Sunday. And, of course, we have USU Eastern tonight. So let's talk basketball. Let's get set for the second half of the season. Joining us right now over the phone, we have Tom Perkins. He's the founder of HoopCityNews.com, also an independent NBA scout. And, Tom, as always, I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Glad to be here. It's been very exciting, especially during the All-Star break. But, we're getting ready to go ahead and come down the stretch here for the playoffs.
Yeah, Tom, with that being said, I know you actually made the trip to the All-Star game. It was controversial. I didn't enjoy it at all. I got to be honest with you. I'm such a fan of the game of basketball, and I don't know what it was. I don't know if it happened to be – it wasn't All-Star weekend. It was All-Star day. I don't believe that the players necessarily wanted to be there. I thought that the All-Star game just lacked a little bit. I don't know. I couldn't get into it this year like I have in previous years. What was it like being there? Was it a similar vibe?
Well, yeah, it was a similar vibe, but there was a highlight that transpired during that All-Star game, and that was the absolute distance shooting with Curry and Damian Lillard. That distance shooting was just incredible inside that game, and Damian Lillard just walked past half court and hit the game winner, so to speak, getting to 170. And so it really kind of marks of things to come. The distance that these guys are shooting now is going to increase even more. So now you're going to have to start picking people up beyond half court. Because these guys, and we're talking about they're making it look easy. So that's kind of the talk of that game. Of course, Antetokounmpo, 16 for 16. And it was interesting to see LeBron be a real captain and a team player. He was very relaxed and mellow, even though he was not one of the stars of the show. And so that was kind of nice to see him taking a step back and cheering on everybody. But, yeah, it wasn't quite the same feel as previous All-Star games. And I'll tell you something else that I really miss. I really missed the East going against the West. I really want that. I don't like this pick'em thing.
I agree with you 100%. I've been on that for years. There was something special about East versus West. There just was. It was fun. I'm with you. I'm not into the drafts. I wasn't into it when the NFL did it. I hope. And eventually we will go back to the old way. It's only a matter of time. It's kind of a fad right now. Eventually it's going to happen. But now that we're past the All-Star break, there has been some news that has popped up. But obviously Blake Griffin signing with the Brooklyn Nets. You told me that was a big topic over All-Star weekend. And I know time frames have kind of shifted, right? Before we had the COVID-shortened season, the idea was for the All-Star break to come after the trade deadline. And I think that was all designed because of the DeMarcus Cousins deal. It was just very uncomfortable for players and for agents and for media members, knowing that Cousins' name was being floated around and the All-Star game was before the deadline. We didn't have that luxury this year because we're still, 15 days, I believe, away from the trade deadline. So there was obviously some chatter and some talk about player movement.
Right, exactly, especially the Blake Griffin move. That's a big move. Now, what people, just kind of resolve themselves to is the fact that Blake Griffin isn't the same guy that he used to be at the Clippers or even his first year with the Pistons. His skills have declined, but he still brings a lot to the Nets. They're already, at this point in time, the most talented offensive team in the league, by far. And the reason why that is, by the way, is because James Harden is willingly giving up the ball, which takes pressure off of Irving, and of course it enhances KD's game. So that is a very talented offensive team. Now, can they go ahead and add some D to that offense? It remains to be seen. In the last few games before the All-Star game, they did play some defense. It's almost like, what do you want to do? You want to go ahead and concentrate on defense and keep D'Antoni away from the practice session? Because, D'Antoni's just living in heaven with all this offense. He could care less about defense.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is they are getting some defense. And once KD comes back, they'll be even a more defensive team. And, of course, the Griffin insertion gives them more muscle right away because he still can bring 25 to 30 minutes.
Again, our guest right now was Tom Perkins of HoopCityNews.com, also an independent NBA scout. Tom, let's talk about the Utah Jazz. They made some waves as well this week. They just add some more depth to this team by signing Ersan Ilyasova. He was traded from Milwaukee to Sacramento, part of that Bogdan Bogdanovic trade, which never really went to fruition, so the Bucks waived Ilyasova, and now he spent the season waiting for his phone to ring. There you have it. The Utah Jazz come to terms with him. Again, it's just a depth piece. I don't know how much he really brings, but Utah needed to make a signing to get to the minimum of 14 players after releasing Shaquille Harrison. So here's Ilyasova. What type of impact can he make on this team moving forward, if any at all?
Well, he's a good role player, and I think that he can contribute. Staying within himself and playing his game. But if he gets out of his game, then he becomes a problem. But I think that he does contribute from the standpoint of being a valuable role player. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he shoots about 37% from the three-point line. It's not exactly a facet of the game where Utah has to improve. They've shot lights out from downtown. In fact, they've been one of the most effective teams from beyond the arc, but it's just another weapon. If by chance you have to go, you got another guy that can launch 35+% from downtown.
Right, exactly. And something about that percentage that I've always held for the past 10 years is that, 35, 36, 7% from three is a pretty good percentage, but it's not in the great category. You've got to be north of 40. You've got to be into the Stephen Curry, Dampier, Damian Lillard. You've got to be in that category to get involved in being a great three-point shooter. So 35, 37%, that's workable, but it's nothing to go ahead and hang your hat on. Now, I'll tell you a guy who's really doing really well lately and who did very well, and I'm so happy for him. Mike Conley getting the nod because of Booker being out. And he did well in the three-point shooting contest. He is really effective when he's starting to shoot threes because he leads the team really well. He runs offense well. He's a real good team leader. So this guy could be the key to all of their success, because we know what Mitchell's going to bring. Of course, Rudy Gobert, he had a very good All-Star game because he played big. Did you see how big he played? I mean, he looked, a lot of the times, guys were just bouncing off him. So Gobert and Conley could be the key to how far the Jazz go, but they're definitely legitimate, and people better not go ahead and sleep on them.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, anyone that says they're not legitimate, I got to question your basketball knowledge, because the sample size is big enough at this point in time that you can't look at that and say this team's no longer legitimate. I mean, we've seen flukes, but we haven't seen flukes that span a half a season. Like, that just doesn't happen. And here they are at 27-9. Now, I will caution, and I've cautioned Jazz fans, that we have seen teams that are built for the regular season. And I hate to make comparisons. You know, we saw the Atlanta Hawks a few years ago. They were built for the regular season. Tom Thibodeau had a couple of teams in Chicago. They were built for the regular season. Same could have been said for Frank Vogel's time in Indiana. I don't think you can make those comparisons at this point in time, but there are cautionary tales. That's all I'm saying.
Right. In other words, again, they're not world beaters, but they're world, let's say, competitors. So in other words, if you think, okay, well, they're not world beaters, so let's just look past them. You better not do that. And I'll tell you what, you just got to love the way Mitchell, how his attitude is such a winner and such a leader. He kind of wills his team sometimes to the victory. So you got to love Mitchell. Yeah,
and again, I think you hit it right on the head. They're not world beaters, they are competitors. But Tom, let me ask you, going into the All-Star break, the Jazz did lose. What was it? I believe they lost 3 or 4 out of their last 7 games to dip to that 27-9 mark. Still, again, best record in the NBA. They lost 3 out of their last 4 games. That's what it was. Is that worrisome at all?
No, that's not a worrisome thing. I mean, you have plateaus. You have those bad runs sometimes, and sometimes teams that are not necessarily quality have good runs. Amazingly enough, they have good runs, and so they kind of ran into that, a little bit of that. So, but I wouldn't worry too much about those that 3 out of 4.
Yeah, I can't stress this enough because again, you're spot on. You have to expect ups and downs throughout the NBA season. You can't hang on every single play or every single possession or even every single game. Case in point, the Washington Wizards, they put together a nice stretch. They won 7 out of 8 games at one particular time. And then how do they close out going into the All-Star break? They lost 2 out of 3. So you can't hang on every possession. It is a marathon. And I think sometimes we as fans, we as analysts and students of the game, we tend to forget that. We get caught up in the game because you love it so much, you get caught up in every single possession, and you just can't do that because it's not a clear indication of this marathon 72-game season that we're in the middle of.
Right. I totally agree because when you do that, then the expectation go through the roof, and if you don't meet those expectations, suddenly you're a bad team, which, of course, is ridiculous. You don't suddenly become a bad team because you had a bad stretch.
Tom, we'll end with this. I know we're a couple of weeks away from the trade deadline, but based on everything that you've heard, based on everything that you have seen, out of the contenders, and when I talk about contenders, I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 seeds in each conference. Which team has to make a trade in your mind to remain in contention for an NBA title?
Well, I would say the Lakers would have to because, again, right now the Lakers are being precautionary in regards to the Achilles for AD. But I have got some sources that I'm close to that tell me that that could be beyond precautionary, meaning that if he is right around the corner of a tear of that Achilles, we've got some real problems. So therefore, it's a situation where they should go ahead and shore up some kind of backup for him to be able to compete for the championship.
And that backup, in my mind, would have to be Andre Drummond because you don't have rim protection. I do think the buyout market is going to be a fairly interesting. Look, I'm going to throw this out there. Another familiar name within the Lakers. I think JaVale McGee is going to be a prime buyout option as well. I just don't see him hanging around in Cleveland much longer either. So I think the Lakers have options as far as the buyout market is concerned.
Yes, I think they do. And like you said, the buyout market is a little bit overrated and a little overdone, but it's still there. And so you might as well take advantage of it when you can do it. And Drummond would be a real nice fit for the Lakers, without a doubt. And if AD comes back strong, that would be even a nicer fit if they get Drummond.
Again, our guest right now, Tom Perkins of HoopCityNews.com. Tom, you always got to tell us about the website, HoopCityNews.com. Please take the time to do that.
Okay. Well, we've been now doing this website for a little over 10 years and gotten a lot of great responses. We're read in about 25 countries. And, I see people all the time in my travels who they're wearing the shirt. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, that's such an honor. So yeah, people are really liking the stories. They like the podcasts that I put on the site. They like the articles. So people have really gotten a fever about HoopCityNews.com. And here's an interesting thing that I was told several times: were men and women, adults, talking about how their kid, who's 8, 9, or 10, starting to read Hoop City News, and their reading ability has picked up because of that. So that's kind of refreshing.
Sure.
And the thing is, I don't use any expletives in my articles. I'm totally grammatically correct. And of course, if I'm not grammatically correct, I've got people like, Jordan.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're here for, right? That's what we're here for.
To let me know that it's not doing. So I think it's a positive thing. So it's good. I just want to deliver the story of basketball because I think it's the greatest game in the history of the world.
Yeah, I agree. Tom, thank you so much for the time, and we'll catch up again real soon.
Fantastic.